My name is Julia Marks, 28 years old, and I stood frozen as my mother handed Evan the keys to a brand new Lexus, the silver bow shining so bright it almost burned. He screamed and threw his arms around our parents, his laughter echoing like the entire world revolved around him. And me? In my hands was just a pair of $4 socks, the discount tag not even bothered to be removed. My mother smiled with a smirk, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. Everyone receives what matches their place. Julia. No one noticed my fingers clench so tightly they turned white. By 2 a.m, while the whole house slept under the glow of Christmas lights, I went through every bank statement from the past 3 years, the bright yellow highlighter marks glowing like confessions they never said out loud. I placed the stack of papers right next to the coffee maker, then pulled my suitcase and walked out the door. The Minnesota cold slapped against my face. But strangely, I felt lighter than I ever had. Before I tell you what waited for me after I walked away from home, let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop your location below, and if you've ever felt so dismissed by your own family that you couldn't believe it, hit like and subscribe. Because what happened right after that was worse, more unfair, but it was also the moment everything began to change. Let me take you back to where it all started. Trust me, this story has far more than you can imagine. 3 years ago, when the snow hadn't fully melted off the Minneapolis streets, I received the email that changed my life. An official offer from the VR company in the North Loop. The salary was higher than anything I'd imagined. The promotion path was clear. And for the first time I truly felt good enough. When I told my parents, my mother Elise practically screamed through the phone. Julia, you did it. We have to celebrate. That evening, my father's restaurant, Marks and Maple, glowed as if they'd just won some kind of award. My dad, Randy, brought out his signature smoked ribs, and my mother opened a bottle of expensive wine I'd never seen her buy before. Our daughter is finally settled, my father said, raising his glass. Elise smiled brighter than the warm yellow ceiling lights. Evan was glued to his phone, but at least he looked up for a second. Nice job. Jules. Maybe now you can fix that old AC in your apartment. I laughed, not knowing that those words would later become a sad prediction. That night, I drove back to my North Loop apartment with a heart as light as falling snow. I didn't know I had just stepped into the only role my family wanted me to play. The first temporary request came right after that dinner. The next morning, Elise called me at 7:12 a.m. I remember clearly because I hadn't even had my coffee. Her voice was so soft it felt like something warm was melting and clinging onto me. Julia, your dad and I are having a bit of a hard time. The restaurant has been slow after the pandemic. The mortgage is a few months behind. Could you help us out? Just temporarily? Only 6 months. 6 months. It sounded simple. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like something any child should do. I didn't even think. Yes. How much? $1,500 a month, but only temporarily. Sweetheart. That very night, I set up the automatic transfer. I told myself, I have a good job and a high salary. Helping my parents for a few months won't hurt. I had no idea that temporary was the most dangerous word in every life built on exploitation. 6 months passed, then 1 year, then 2, then 3. I worked hard, got raises, and was trusted with bigger projects. My friends started buying new cars, taking trips to Colorado, and upgrading their apartments. And me, I calculated every single dollar, tracked every utility bill, wondered how many more weeks I could live off instant noodles. My apartment still had that damn old AC, and in the summer I had to sit in front of a fan like I was camping inside my own home. Meanwhile, Elise showed off a new coat on Facebook. Randy installed a 65-inch TV for the bar at Marks and Maple. Evan posted stories from Chicago concerts, brunches, and designer items. One time I asked my mom, Where does Evan get money to travel like that? Elise waved her hand dismissively. He's young. Honey. Let him enjoy life. You're the one who's stable. I sat there in silence. I'm not sure which part hurt the most. You're the one who's stable. Stable meaning I had to carry everything. One night, I came home to find my electricity bill doubled because the AC had finally died. I called a repair tech. They quoted $850. I didn't have $850. I chose to keep living with the fan I'd had since college. The next day, Elise posted a story. Marks and Maple got a new bar TV. Big upgrade. That TV cost at least $1,200. I stared at my phone, my hand trembling slightly, not from anger, but because for the first time I wondered, were my parents truly struggling? Or only struggling with me? Every call started with affection and ended with the same familiar line. Thank goodness for you. What began as gratitude had turned into a debt, then into an expectation, then into an obligation. I began to realize I wasn't a daughter. I was a life raft. But then, there was one moment that made me understand everything was about to explode. One night, Elise called me close to 11 p.m. Julia, Evan needs money to buy a flight ticket to Seattle to visit a friend. Could you send him $300? I was sitting in front of my fan, sweat sticking to the back of my neck, and my laptop showed the room temperature at 31 degrees Celsius. I asked gently, Mom, why can't Evan pay for it himself? Silence for a few seconds. Then, Julia, you're the responsible one in this family. You should be more considerate than your brother. That was when I felt a door close inside me. Not because of the $300, but because I realized my family had fully decided that I existed to carry everyone else. And I didn't know that just a few months later, they would demand even more, so much more that it would destroy everything. But that Christmas gift turned every doubt I had into a truth I could no longer deny. That celebration dinner was the very first trap I never realized I was walking into. 3 years ago, on a June evening, I returned to my North Loop apartment with the acceptance email still glowing on my screen. Silvergrid Analytics. A salary the 22-year-old version of me would never have dared to dream about. I called home immediately. My mother screamed into the phone as if I had just announced I'd won a national lottery. My dad said, "Come home. Honey, I'm making ribs. We have to celebrate." That night, I drove to Lakeview Heights with hopeful music playing. When I stepped inside, the dinner table looked like a poster for the perfect American family meal. Glossy barbecue ribs, colorful salad, and an apple pie smelling of warm cinnamon. But then, I saw Evan. He wasn't even looking at me, only showing off his new watch to a friend over FaceTime. And when my mother hugged me, I realized that embrace wasn't as real as I thought. Only a few months, the sentence that opened the door to the 3 years that drained my youth. While we were cleaning the kitchen, my mother lowered her voice, soft like someone asking for an extra ladle of soup at a diner. "Julia, your father and I are having a little trouble with the restaurant. Just a difficult phase," my dad added. I paused, still holding a plate streaked with rib sauce. "What can I help with?" The stupidest question of my life. The question that ended my freedom. My mother said the number. $1,400 a month temporarily. I nodded immediately. Family comes first. I didn't know. That was the last time for years that I would make a decision for myself without being tied down by responsibility. During the first months, I told myself, it's fine. It's family. But then, my parents' restaurant announced the best business quarter ever. Evan posted Instagram photos from concerts and trips to Chicago, showing off new sneakers every single week. My mother bought a new crystal glass set for the living room. My dad upgraded the living room TV to a 75-inch screen. And me? I reheated watery coffee to save money for a new bag of grounds. I didn't complain. didn't demand, and just waited for one sentence. Julia, starting this month, we can take care of things ourselves. But that sentence never came. Not even when the restaurant remodeled the entire bar area. Not even when Evan showed off a new car he bought with side job money. Side job? Where exactly did he work a side job? There were nights in my North Loop apartment when I sat in front of my laptop, its screen light reflecting off the bills spread across my table. AC repair. $900. Credit card. $300 money sent to Lakeview Heights. $1,400. As regular as a fever cycle. I remember lying awake, listening to the broken AC blow hot air, while Evan posted stories of eating Wagyu steak. Or the time I bought a shirt at Target and my mother asked, "Do you really need to be that wasteful?" I laughed. An $18 shirt. In the same week, I saw my mom post photos of a fancy brunch with her friends, the mimosa glass still tagged with the location sticker of the most expensive restaurant in Uptown. I began to understand. What I was sending wasn't family support. It was money to maintain the lifestyle they wanted. Only when that receipt appeared did I realize I had been living in an illusion for 3 years. On a late autumn evening, I came to my parents' house for dinner. The weather had turned cold, yellow leaves carpeting the walkway. I sat in the kitchen, sipping plain water, watching Evan laugh loudly with his friend over the phone. My mother was unpacking newly bought items onto the counter. Thick paper bags, luxurious ribbon handles. A small slip of paper fell out. I instinctively bent down to pick it up. A receipt. I read one single line. $1,398.40. Department store luxury apparel. That number was suffocatingly familiar. Too familiar. It was the exact amount I transferred to them every month. Not off by even a cent. My mother looked at me, smiling dismissively. "It's nothing, Julia. You know, women need a little something for themselves. Women need a little something for themselves. And me? I hadn't been able to afford a new pair of shoes in almost 2 years. In that moment, I knew. I wasn't helping my family through hard times. I was paying for everything they wanted, from crystal glasses to fur coats. And I was nothing more than a credit card with a heartbeat. I left Lakeview Heights that night with cold palms, because for the first time in my life, I knew I was only one step away from the biggest betrayal. Sometimes, the family doesn't need to shout to hurt you. They just need to stay silent at the right moments. Ever since the night I discovered that luxury receipt, every time I walked into Lakeview Heights, I felt like stepping into a house covered in dust, even though everything still shone like usual. Elise was different. Every sentence she said carried the tone of comparison. "Evan is more thoughtful than you. At least he doesn't complain about money." I had only asked why the dishwasher had broken 3 times in 1 year. Her answer had nothing to do with it but said far too much. Randy just sat there, tapping his beer glass lightly, his eyes avoiding everything. There are kinds of silence that suffocate more than yelling ever could. Evan came downstairs, blasting music so loudly the floor vibrated. He nodded at me like greeting an acquaintance, not his sister. No one in that house noticed I was shrinking a little more each day. The new requests began arriving as regularly as the electric bill, and just as unreasonably. The next week, Elise texted at 6 a.m. "Julia, send us $300 to fix the dishwasher. Urgent." The following day, "The restaurant needs a $500 deposit for a new client group. Transfer it soon." Another week, "Your dad has to pay temporary taxes. Send $650 to me." Everything was urgent. Everything went to me and only me. I read the messages in the kitchen, holding a cup of stale, cold coffee, and wondered, when will they ever say thank you? When is it ever enough? Mornings in Minneapolis are always cold, but no morning ever made me shiver like that one. That afternoon, I met Mason at Drift Coffee House. He looked at me for a long moment before asking, "Julia, In these 3 years, has there been any time they didn't ask you for something? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. I was trying to remember. Trying to search my memory for a day when my parents called me, just to ask, "How are you today?" I couldn't find one. Mason placed his warm hand gently on my wrist. His voice soft, but cutting into a wound. It kept hidden for years. "I think you've never really been loved the right way." That sentence was like a blade touching an old wound. It hurt. And it was true. On the drive back to North Loop, and memories rushed in like someone was playing an old film inside my head. When I turned 10, Evan was 6. They threw him a birthday party at the biggest play center in Minneapolis. A 3-tier cake, a clown, and gifts piled across the sofa. My birthday 2 months later? A tiny cake, bought last minute from the cheapest bakery on the corner. Elise said, "You're older now. You don't need all the fuss." No fuss. No gifts. Nothing. Just endure. The past 3 years had simply been a repeat of the same old story. One night, at the dinner table, I asked Elise directly, "I've sent $1,400 every month for 3 years. When do you plan to start paying it yourselves?" The air thickened immediately. Elise set down her knife and fork, looking at me as though I had insulted something sacred. "Julia, why are you being so petty? We're family?" Randy still said nothing. Evan snorted. "You make the most money in the house. You mean you're bothered by that little amount?" That little amount? The money I sent every month was equal to all my rent and groceries combined. I looked at each of their faces, and for the first time, I saw clearly. They didn't think they were doing anything wrong. They believed I should do it, as if it were a role assigned to me the day I was born. That night, Randy stood at my bedroom door. He scratched his head, sighed, and looked like he wanted to say something, then didn't. He only said, "Your mom gets heated too easily. Don't take it to heart." Then he walked away. No apology. No explanation. I realized. His silence was agreement. Agreement to let me be used. And that hurt more than all of Elise's harshness combined. Then came the day I discovered the unexplainable expense. One evening, I was in my parents' living room, waiting for Elise to grab her keys while she asked me to log into her laptop and sign up for a new insurance plan for the restaurant. In the statements folder, a new file popped up. Reservation, Evan Hale event deposit. I opened it. Inside was a deposit receipt for $1,398 for Evan's private event at a high-end event center in Uptown. That number was numbingly familiar. Too familiar. $1,398. The exact amount I sent them every month, just $2 short of $1,400. I heard Elise's footsteps behind me and quickly closed the tab, my heart pounding. Elise smiled casually. "Are you done? Evan's almost got to leave for the gym. I need the laptop." Her voice was light, but inside me, something broke. That was when I realized the money I sent wasn't for the restaurant. Not for bills. Not for the family. It was to fund Evan's luxurious lifestyle. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel guilty, thinking, maybe my own family had turned me into the only fool in that entire house. But then, my family began revealing the face I had spent years trying not to look at directly. I returned to Lakeview Heights on a gray Saturday afternoon. The Minneapolis sky looked like a wrinkled tablecloth, heavy and suffocating. Inside the house, the air felt even tighter. Evan was sitting on the sofa, feet propped on the table, playing games on his brand new console. I remembered that console clearly because it had appeared in his Instagram story a week earlier with the caption, "Treating myself a little." Elise sat at the dining table with her notebook, but instead of calculating restaurant expenses like she claimed, I saw lists of charges for designer items, beauty services, and event reservations. My father was in his usual corner, silent like an old piece of furniture. His eyes darted away every time they accidentally met mine. This house used to be where I ran after terrible days at school. Now it was just a place with 3 people, living very comfortably on my money. But the drop that made the cup overflow came from Elise herself. The moment I set my bag down, Elise looked up. "Julia, you're here? Did you remember to bring something for dinner? I thought you would just know." I frowned. They had never asked me to bring food when visiting home. I didn't know I had to. You didn't tell me. Elise let out a soft laugh, her tone sugary. "You're an adult. Julia. Do I really have to remind you of everything? Responsibility means knowing what to do." Responsibility. There was that word again. A chill slowly crept up my spine. She no longer saw me as a daughter, she saw me as a stable resource. A built-in mechanism required to keep this family running smoothly. After dinner, Elise placed a hand on my shoulder, speaking with forced gentleness. "Julia, I need your help with something. Just $2,000. The restaurant's new oven broke, and customers had booked heavily. She didn't want to lose face. $2,000. More than any previous emergency." I didn't answer immediately. I was remembering something familiar. Evan had posted a story in Uptown the week before, inside a luxury tech store, holding a brand new drone. A drone worth around $2,000. My throat felt dry, as if someone had poured sand down it. "The oven? At the restaurant?" I asked slowly. Elise nodded. I looked at her for a long moment, searching for even a flicker of sincerity. I found nothing. I walked to Evan's room and knocked. "Hey, just asking. That drone in your story, who bought it?" Evan shrugged. "Mom did." "Why? And where did the money come from?" I asked directly. He laughed out loud. "You're being way too serious. Just keep transferring money to Mom and Dad, and everything will be fine." His voice was light as candy, but each word cracked against my skull like stones. Evan looked at me as if I were disrupting his peace. "You're the one who earns the most. What's the point of letting money sit there?" he said, as if stating a universal truth. To Evan, my money was a family resource. There was no concept of ownership, no boundaries. On the drive back to North Loop, the memories hit hard. Just 6 months. Honey, let us sort things out a little longer. Temporary. Julia. I heard those lines replay in my mind like warped old tape. 3 years. 3 years for 6 months. 3 years of cutting back on food, clothes, dates, and outings. 3 years so Evan could live extravagantly. 3 years so Elise could shop as if the crisis never existed. The next evening, I returned to Lakeview Heights. I placed the bank statement on the dining table, right in front of Elise. "Explain this." "Evans, $1,398, what is it?" Elise raised her eyebrows. "What are you doing? Are you trying to investigate your mother? I'm asking because I need the truth." Elise leaned back, arms crossed. "Julia, you're becoming more and more like an outsider. Why do you think so much? This family raised you, fed you, and educated you. Now you help a little, and it's suddenly a problem?" I inhaled slowly. "I'm not struggling because of the money. I'm struggling because of the truth." Elise laughed. "The truth is, you have an obligation to this family. Just like always. Just like always." The whole world tilted. I turned to my father. "Dad, what do you think about this?" Randy set his beer bottle down, his eyes searching for an escape. "Don't make this a big deal. Your mom only wants what's best for the family." "Dad, do you think 3 years is a long time?" He didn't answer. Only silence. A kind of silence that told me he had taken their side a long time ago, he just never had the courage to say it. And that hurt 10 times more. But what made me want to explode was the statement I found that night. That night, when Elise asked me to grab a tax file from her computer, I discovered a transfer line. Transfer to Evan Marks, $700. Transfer date: the same day I sent $1,400. Half. Exactly half. They split my money. Half for the family. Half for Evan. I stood frozen. The computer mouse slipped from my hand, and I didn't even notice. I hadn't expected much, but this crossed every limit. I wasn't just being used. I was treated as Evan's secondary income. I stood before Evan's door. My hand was ice cold. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel obligated. I only felt a burning need to know the truth. This time, I would hear him say it directly, and I would not leave until Evan answered every single question. But I didn't know that confrontation would change everything. I stood in front of Evan's door, my fingers resting on the cold metal doorknob. The dim hallway was lit only by a tired yellow wall lamp, the same exhausted glow that perfectly matched my past 3 years. I pushed the door open. The smell of expensive room spray drifted out. Blue and red LED lights cast a neon glow across Evan's face as he lounged in his gaming chair, feet propped on a brand new sports bag. He turned and saw me. Smirked. "What's up, big sister?" His tone made it sound like I had just interrupted the most precious relaxation time of his life. I inhaled deeply, keeping my voice calm. "You know what this is about?" "About what?" Evan feigned surprise, not even pausing his game. "The money. The drone. The event. All of it. Where did it come from?" Evan pressed pause and spun his chair around. The LED lights reflected in his eyes, forming a cold, unfamiliar halo. "From Mom." "What's the problem?" My hands tightened. "From Mom. Using my money?" Evan tilted his head, genuinely puzzled, like I had asked him a simple math question. "Julia, you make money. You send it home. The family uses it. Isn't that normal?" I stared into his eyes. There was no guilt, only entitlement and comfort. And the moment Evan opened his mouth, I knew I had no way back. The door flew open, and Elise appeared in the doorway. She crossed her arms, looking between us like watching a poorly acted play. "Julia, I heard your voice from downstairs." "What's going on?" I pointed at Evan. "I want to know why every single dollar I've sent for the past 3 years ended up in his pocket." Elise raised an eyebrow, not a hint of shame. "Don't exaggerate. When the family needs something, whoever can help should help. Evan needs support for his future. He's still young." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "And what about me? Am I old now?" Elise narrowed her eyes, her voice low and sharp as a thin blade. "You have a stable career. You can take care of yourself. Evan isn't as strong as you." I spoke slowly. "So you're saying, because I'm strong, I have to pay for his weakness?" Elise answered without hesitation. "Yes." Only one word. Small, clean, but powerful enough to shatter every remaining belief I had left. I looked directly at Elise, then at Randy standing near the stairs. "I want to ask one question, and I want a real answer." No one spoke. I emphasized each word. "In 3 years, has a single dollar I sent ever been used for the restaurant?" The room froze. Evan glanced at Elise. Elise looked at Randy. Randy stared at the floor. No one opened their mouth. Not one. The silence stretched so long, I could hear the ceiling fan spinning overhead, a dull hum erasing the last of my illusions. I sat in the chair across from Evan, strangely calm. "I'll ask one last time. Yes or no?" Elise folded her arms, using that moralizing tone she always hid behind. "Julia, you need to examine your attitude. Family isn't a place to nitpick about money. You're making everything worse. I leaned back. No. You made everything worse. The entire room went silent. I continued. 3 years. 3 years of sending $1,400 every month. I cut back on food. Vacations. Everything. I never complained. Never asked for anything. Because I believed you actually needed it. I pointed at Evan. But it turns out, it was also he could buy new toys? Evan laughed. Julia, you're being way too sensitive. Shut up. My voice was so sharp that Evan actually froze. I turned to Elise. You said I have obligations. Then what about you? What's your obligation to me? Respect? Honesty? Or just draining me dry? Elise's face flushed not from shame, but from being challenged. She snapped. You've changed. Julia, you're selfish now. All you care about is money. Evan added. Exactly. You're making a big deal out of nothing. You earn good money. So why not help? Because it's my money. I cut him off. My voice low and cold as steel. I turned to Randy. Dad, your silence means you agree? Randy fidgeted. He pressed his lips together, looking like he wanted to speak, but finally only sighed. Julia, don't break the family over small things. My heart sank. Not because of what he said, but because I realized he had never taken my side, not even once. I stood up. My hand touched the dining table, the cold surface grounding me back into reality. I spoke clearly, without trembling. Starting today, I am stopping all financial support. Elise shot up. Julia, you can't. Yes, I can. And I will. Evan's eyes widened. You're joking, right? I have plans. I looked straight at him. You have this entire family behind you. Just not me anymore. Elise shouted. If you do this family will collapse. I smiled softly without sadness. If a family only stands when one person sacrifices everything, it already collapsed long ago. Randy lowered his head. Evan clenched his jaw. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling like I was leaving behind an entire lifetime. But I hadn't even reached the end of the hallway when I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. I had only taken a few steps when Evan whispered to Elise. It's okay. Mom, I have another way to get money. Elise whispered back. What way? Evan snickered. Leave it to me. My heart lurched violently. Maybe. I hadn't seen the worst of them yet. But this time I would not let them touch my life ever again. I thought I had walked away from them, until they found another way to break into my life. The very next morning, after I left the house, my phone buzzed nonstop. I had it on silent, but the screen kept lighting up like knives tapping against my mind. 16 missed calls. Mom, 9 missed calls. Evan, 4 missed calls. Dad. I opened the voicemail. Elise's voice came through, shaky and dramatic. Julia, what are you doing? I truly don't understand. I just want what's best. You're tearing this family apart. Her tone was half accusation, half performance. I heard both. Evan's voice was different, sharp and disrespectful. You think walking out solves anything? You're destroying everything. Mom has been crying since morning. You're cruel. Julia! Randy left one short message. Come home and talk like an adult. I turned the phone off. I thought walking out meant freedom. But the truth was, I had only touched the edge of the real chaos. But I never expected they would drag the outside world into this family war. By noon, I had nearly 30 messages from relatives. Every single one sounded like Elise's copy-pasted clone. Julia, you cannot treat your parents like that. What kind of daughter leaves when her mother faints crying? You look down on family? I sat frozen on my sofa, holding a cup of cold coffee. Every message felt like another stone being placed on my chest. Then a text from my closest college friend. Casey. Julia. My cousin said something about your family in a Facebook group. Is it true? My throat tightened. Even someone who knew me best started doubting. That evening, the thing I feared most happened. I saw Elise's post in the Highlands Ranch community group, a group with more than 22,000 members. When your daughter becomes successful and abandons you right when we face our hardest time, we only wanted to keep our home. But she said we were using her. Being a parent hurts sometimes. More than 400 reactions. The comments below were filled with strangers condemning the ungrateful daughter. My name wasn't mentioned directly, but everyone who knew the family knew exactly who she meant. I read each line, feeling my throat tighten as if invisible fingers were choking me. They turned me into the villain. No one knew the truth that I had kept that home standing for 3 years straight. The next day, when I arrived at the office, the glass high-rise in downtown Denver, I saw Evan standing right in front of the entrance. Hoodie up, eyes bloodshot, swaying like he hadn't slept all night. I froze. Evan saw me. He marched over, voice harsh. Do you know Mom cried so much she had to take sedatives? Do you know Dad hasn't slept? Do you know you just destroyed this family? My coworkers started slowing down to watch. A hot wave of humiliation rose from my chest to my face. I whispered, Evan, this is not the place. Why not? Evan shouted, You running away? You can't even face us? A few people from my floor leaned over the balcony to look. I heard whispers. Who is that guy? What kind of drama is this? HR stepped out and placed a hand on my shoulder. Julia, do you need assistance? I took a long breath and straightened my back. It's fine. I can handle it. I looked at Evan. You are not allowed to come to my workplace ever again. If you show up again, I will call security. Evan let out a bitter laugh. You? Call security on me? Who do you think you are? I answered softly. Someone who will not be used anymore. Evan froze. And me. I was shaking. My whole body trembled. But I did not bow my head. For the first time. But the pressure didn't stop. They still had another card to play. When I got home, my phone rang again. Randy. I picked up. Julia, he sighed. You've disappointed your parents. I said nothing. Your mother cried so much she had to see a doctor. Evan is falling apart. You've destroyed the family. I destroyed it? My teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. Randy continued. You're the one with the most money. If you don't help, who will? You want to see this family fall apart? You want your parents living on the street? I closed my eyes. This wasn't love. This was a chain. My voice was quiet, but each word was as sharp as a blade. I am no longer responsible for everyone's life. Silence. Only heavy breathing and shock. Finally, Randy said the line I had heard all my life. You're selfish. Julia. I answered calmly. No. I'm living like an adult. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. There was only stillness, like a lake after a storm. I opened my contacts list. So many familiar names. Block. 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 Every tap felt like lifting another stone off my chest. I stepped out onto the balcony of my small Capitol Hill apartment. The Denver wind rushed across my face. The yellow streetlights stretched into long, trembling lines beneath me. And for the first time, I could breathe. I was no longer the shadow built from their expectations. I was Julia, and I was learning to stand alone. But I didn't know, that night, someone would knock on my door. And when I opened it, everything in my life would shift in a completely new direction. I thought I had escaped the storm, until I realized silence can also be a warning. I woke up on a rare morning when my chest didn't feel crushed by invisible weight. Denver sunlight slipped through my curtains, laying a soft golden stripe across the wooden floor. This tiny apartment, for the first time, looked like a place to live in, not a place to hide. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, its warm scent stitching together the little tears inside me. On the table sat a newly bought lavender plant. I touched its leaves soft, fresh, a feeling I hadn't allowed myself to experience in 3 years. Something as simple as buying flowers. I had cut that out too. Now I understood. Not because I didn't want them, but because I didn't dare. In the afternoon, I went grocery shopping. For the first time in years, I didn't stand frozen in the aisle comparing every price. I bought a good piece of salmon, a bottle of quality olive oil, and a candle 3 times more expensive than the discount vanilla candle Elise once gave me for Christmas. That evening, in my kitchen, the sound of oil sizzling in the pan felt like a piece of music I had forgotten for far too long. Just me. No demands. No phone calls asking for money. No crying. No guilt. No lectures about family responsibility. Just me. Soft jazz. And a meal I cooked because I wanted to, not because I had to. This feeling almost felt like freedom. It almost felt like happiness. But in the quietest nights, the past began knocking. Silently. At work, I found myself smiling more. Smiles that weren't forced, not masks to hide exhaustion. I said yes to coworkers inviting me for coffee, something I once always declined because I was busy sending money home. On Larimer Square, under strands of hanging yellow lights, we sat beneath an outdoor canopy, hands wrapped around warm lattes. I listened to them talk about their lives, relationships, new projects, and upcoming trips. That was when I realized. For 3 years, I had been alive without actually living. That night, when I got home, I turned on an old playlist. The small lamp reflected off an empty frame on the wall. I had meant to hang it ages ago, but I never had the time or the emotional space to make this place a home. Now I wanted to. I wanted to live. Around 3 weeks after I cut contact, I returned from the downtown night market to find a yellow envelope lying at my door. No sender. Just, Julia, important. My heart tightened. My hands trembled as I peeled the seal open. Inside were past due notices, a house foreclosure warning, and a handwritten note. We are about to lose everything. Elise, no call. No apology. Just one short sentence, full of desperation. I sat down on the doorstep as the hallway light cast sharp shadows across the paper edges. My family was collapsing for real. And in that quiet moment, I realized something even worse than betrayal. I clutched the papers and stepped inside. The soft living room light glowed warmly, but my hands were so cold I could hardly feel them. I read everything again. And again. The sofa beneath me felt softer, as if it were trying to swallow me along with this mess. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to be used again. I didn't want to become a walking ATM again. But this was my father. This was the home I grew up in. I had been free for only 3 weeks, 3 short weeks, and now I stood at the door of responsibility one more time. In the second letter Elise sent, her handwriting trembled. Your father is not well. Don't let it be too late. I couldn't hold it anymore. A tear fell, soaking into the paper. I hated how they used emotions to pull me back. But I hated myself even more, for still caring. It wasn't weakness. It was instinct. Affection. A part of me that 3 years of exploitation still couldn't kill. That night, while I sat by the window watching Denver's lights stretch across the horizon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Julia? I recognized the voice instantly. Not Elise. Not Evan. Not Randy. But someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Aunt Meredith. Elise's cousin, who always hated my mother's irresponsible spending, and the only relative who hadn't sent me blame-filled messages afterward. Julia, I know you don't want to be bothered, but I need to talk to you now. Her tone was serious. No judgment. Only concern. What is it, Aunt Meredith? I asked quietly. She hesitated for a few seconds. It's about your father. And about something you don't know yet. I shot upright. What do you mean? A long silence, like she was deciding whether she should reveal it. Then she took a breath. Julia, you need to prepare yourself. There is something your parents have hidden from you for many years. Something connected to why they depend on you, more than you think. A cold chill ran through me even though the windows were closed. What is it? I whispered. Aunt Meredith replied, This, you need to hear in person. I'm coming to Denver tomorrow. My heart pounded, each beat crashing against my ribs. I didn't know what was coming, but I felt it. It would change everything I thought I knew about my family. And I had no idea. The truth Aunt Meredith would bring the next day would shatter the very last wall I still had left. I didn't expect that the truth Meredith brought wouldn't hurt me more but would help me understand why I had to leave. Meredith sat across from me in a small cafe on Curtis Street. The warm yellow light fell across her face, no longer carrying the cold sharpness she used to have when I was a child. She set her tea down and looked at me for a long time. Julia, you've been used as a life raft since you were 15. I froze. Meredith continued. Your father, Randy, went bankrupt once. Bad enough that he almost lost the house. Elise managed to keep things afloat by borrowing from multiple places, and from that point on, they just learned to survive by depending on the strongest person in the family. Her voice tightened. This time is the same. They're not trying to change. They're just looking for someone to carry the weight for them. I didn't cry. I just felt a soft sadness. Gentle. Like finally seeing the real picture after waiting too long for it to be prettier than it was. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, looking at the overdue notices Elise had left at my door. I wasn't shaking like the first day. I wasn't drowning in guilt anymore. I only knew one thing. I would no longer let them define love as a sacrifice made only by me. I sent Elise a single text. I will help with Dad's insurance, but I will not pay any debts. And I will not return to the old life. A boundary. Firm enough. Gentle enough. But healthy. We met at a small cafe in Lone Tree. Elise looked tired and thinner. Randy no longer had the confident posture he once carried. There were no dramatic tears. No accusations. Only the silence between people who had grown too used to hurting each other. Elise clasped her hands together, speaking quietly. Julia, I'm sorry. I was wrong. We were wrong. I exhaled softly. I know. And I forgive you. But I cannot go back to how things were. Randy nodded, and for the first time his eyes didn't look away. You don't owe us anything. Thank you for not abandoning us completely. I smiled. A smile no longer bitter. That evening, I sat by the window in my Capitol Hill apartment. Cold air slipped through the window frame. But this time, I felt peaceful. I no longer wanted to fix what couldn't be fixed. I only wanted to live the life I had spent too many years trying to reclaim. And for the first time, I truly believed I deserved it. If you're listening, and you feel like you're carrying a family that never sees the weight you hold, remember this. Boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are love, directed toward yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. Please like and subscribe so I can share more meaningful and heartfelt stories with you.